What if the smartest person in the room was a 10-year-old girl? That question didn't even exist in Elon Musk's mind when he stepped onto the stage at the Texas Future Frontiers Summit. He wasn't prepared to be impressed, he rarely was. The hall buzzed with curiosity, anticipation, and whispers about the rumored child genius who would be presenting. Elon, half-focused, scanned his schedule and sipped a lukewarm coffee from a biodegradable cup that annoyed him. He didn't like performative eco-friendliness, he preferred building rockets to Mars as his answer to planetary problems. As his eyes lazily moved across the list of participants, one name stood out, not because he recognized it, but because it was marked with an asterisk and a short note, Emily Carter, age 10. Topic: The ethics of accelerated intelligence. He blinked. A 10-year-old speaking at a summit usually reserved for MIT grads and AI engineers. Some kind of gimmick, he thought. Maybe a child actor reading something scripted. Still, something about the way her name was handwritten in ink, unlike the other printed names, gave him pause. Elon looked up as the host, a beaming moderator with too much energy, bounded onto the stage and called for everyone to settle. Good afternoon, visionaries and dreamers. Today, we welcome a unique voice to our platform. She may be small in stature, but the weight of her ideas might just bend your minds. The audience chuckled politely, already pulling out their phones to record. Please welcome Emily Carter. From the left of the stage, a thin girl stepped forward. Her dark brown hair was tied back into a loose braid, glasses slipping slightly down her nose. She wore a pale blue hoodie with tiny stars on it and jeans that were too long, rolled at the ankles. She looked like someone you might pass in the cereal aisle of a grocery store. But her eyes, those caught Elon's attention. They scanned the crowd with eerie calm. No nervous blinking. No fake smile. She stepped to the podium, adjusted the mic herself, and said nothing for 5 full seconds. The silence grew awkward. Elon leaned forward. Then she spoke. Most people ask what intelligence can do. But I think a better question is, what should intelligence be allowed to do? The room quieted. A few phones stopped recording, as if the owners realized this wasn't going to be a cute moment. Emily continued, her voice clear but soft. She spoke without notes. I've read about AI solving medical problems. I've read about it passing the bar exam. I've also read about AI making fake videos that could start wars. So I wonder, if we build machines smarter than us, but without values, what exactly are we accelerating toward? Elon squinted. The girl wasn't just smart. She was pointed. Philosophical. And she wasn't reciting, this was her mind at work. Emily paused again, looking out over the audience. When I was 6, I asked my mom why bad people sometimes win. She told me that intelligence without kindness is just strategy. I think about that every time I read tech news. A chuckle swept the room. But Emily wasn't joking. She stood quietly as her words settled like dust over the audience. Elon was intrigued despite himself. His mind, usually spinning with algorithms and expansion plans, went still. The girl finished her short speech by saying, "We must evolve emotionally as fast as we evolve intellectually, or we won't survive our own inventions." Applause came slow, then built into a standing ovation. Emily nodded once and stepped back. Elon clapped with his fingers pressed together, lost in thought. The host returned, grinning wider now, and announced a special Q&A with Elon Musk. Elon took the stage beside her. Cameras flashed. The two couldn't have looked more different, giant visionary billionaire in a black blazer, and a 10-year-old in sneakers who hadn't flinched in front of 2,000 people. Elon leaned toward the mic, smiled slightly, and asked, "Emily, if you had all the money in the world and unlimited resources, what would you build?" A hush fell. Everyone expected something precocious. Maybe a renewable energy reactor. A rocket better than SpaceX. Or a cure for something rare. Emily's eyes narrowed just slightly. She said nothing for 6 long seconds. Then she tilted her head and said, "A machine that could measure the value of a soul." Silence. Audible gasps. The moderator blinked rapidly. Elon sat frozen. A flicker crossed his face, disbelief, or awe, or maybe both. Emily didn't elaborate. She looked at him with such calmness, as if the weight of what she'd said was self-evident. Elon's throat tightened, unexpectedly. Something about that answer clawed into a part of his brain he hadn't visited in years. The crowd erupted. Phones flew up again. But Elon sat, staring at her. "That's unexpected," he finally managed. Emily shrugged. "But isn't that the question behind every invention? What's it for, and who does it help?" Elon nodded slowly. He had no follow-up. The panel ended shortly after. But the clip would go viral before dinner. Across the world, people would see a 10-year-old girl stump the man who launched cars into space. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the internet, someone would write the comment that captured the moment best: "She didn't beat him with data. She beat him with purpose." But for now, in the auditorium, people still buzzed about the girl who asked the question that stopped Elon Musk cold. And far away, watching on a live stream in Ohio, a schoolteacher with tears in her eyes whispered to herself, "That's my daughter." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before Emily Carter ever stepped onto that stage in Austin, before the world knew her as the girl who stunned Elon Musk into silence, she was just a little girl sitting on the floor of a modest farmhouse in rural Ohio, surrounded by books older than her. The wooden floorboards creaked under her as she read a battered copy of Carl Sagan's Cosmos, her lips moving silently, not because she didn't know the words, but because the rhythm of them gave her comfort. Outside, the wind rustled the cornstalks that stretched for acres behind their home. Emily liked the sound of cornfields when the wind danced through them. It reminded her of white noise in deep space recordings. Her world wasn't glamorous. There were no private tutors, no scholarships, no viral videos or podiums. Just her mother Amanda, and a memory that lingered like the scent of old cologne in a closet, that of her father, Jack Carter. Jack had been an auto mechanic with a deep curiosity about everything. He could explain the laws of thermodynamics while rebuilding an engine, and though he'd never gone to college, he had once told Amanda that he believed intelligence wasn't what you knew, but what questions you dared to ask. Emily absorbed that. She was 4 when Jack died in a traffic accident on the highway just outside Dayton. She had been too young to understand grief, but not too young to feel the void it left. After his death, Amanda left her job as a high school physics teacher and decided to homeschool Emily full-time. Not because she wanted to turn her into a prodigy, but because she saw something different in her daughter, a quiet, explosive brilliance that didn't fit inside standardized classrooms or predictable curriculums. Emily didn't speak much at first. She had always been observant, and after Jack died, she became even more withdrawn. But one day, at 5 years old, she brought Amanda a sketch of a particle accelerator she had drawn using a ballpoint pen and a ruler. It was crude but shockingly correct. "Where did you learn this?" Amanda asked, kneeling beside her. Emily looked up. "It's in the book," she said simply, referring to a dog-eared physics textbook Jack had kept in the garage. By 6, she was reading Hawking. By 7, she had taught herself to code in Python, building rudimentary simulations of gravity and motion using only online tutorials and instinct. She didn't play with dolls or watch cartoons. Her idea of fun was watching lectures from MIT and pausing every 5 minutes to take notes. Her brain wasn't just advanced, it was organized in a way Amanda had never seen, not even in her brightest former students. But what made Emily remarkable wasn't just her intellect. It was her empathy. She cried after watching a documentary about deforestation. She asked Amanda if numbers could feel lonely. She once gave away all her birthday presents to a shelter without telling anyone. Stuff is just stuff, she had said. But people aren't just people. They're stories. You don't throw stories away. That sentence haunted Amanda in a good way. It was Jack's wisdom reborn through their daughter. Still, brilliance came at a cost. Emily struggled to connect with children her age. They didn't understand why she didn't care about video games or clothes or social media. Birthday parties exhausted her. School had been a disaster. A second-grade teacher once accused Amanda of coaching her to seem smarter than she was. Emily came home crying that day. After that, Amanda pulled her out permanently. She created a custom curriculum blending science, philosophy, and art. She encouraged Emily to ask not just how, but why. At night, they would lie on a blanket in the backyard, staring up at the stars, and Amanda would whisper constellations while Emily explained the death cycle of supernovas. It was their bond, mother and daughter, mentor and prodigy, best friends trying to navigate a life that didn't quite fit the mold. They were poor by most standards. Amanda worked part-time as a freelance science editor to make ends meet. Their house was small, their meals simple. But there was love. There was laughter. And there were ideas, big, wild, strange ideas that filled the air like lightning waiting to strike. Emily often said she felt like she was born in the wrong century. All the cool things are ahead of us, she would sigh. And I'm stuck here in the early chapters. Amanda would laugh and remind her that maybe she was here to write the chapters that came next. One afternoon, Emily found an article about Elon Musk while researching artificial intelligence. She was fascinated, not by the rockets or the wealth, but by his strange mix of ambition and awkwardness. She read his quotes and found them chaotic but sincere. He's like a walking contradiction, she said once. He builds machines to leave Earth but doesn't know how to sit still on it. She admired his mind but questioned his morals. Sometimes I think he's building escape plans instead of solutions, she told Amanda. But maybe you need to be a little broken to dream that big. Amanda said nothing. She knew Emily's mind worked on tracks too fast and too complex for most people. Sometimes even she struggled to keep up. But she always listened. Then came the email. It was a cold January morning. Amanda opened her inbox and stared at the message for nearly 2 minutes before calling Emily over. There's a summit in Texas, she said. They're inviting young minds to speak about the future. And, they want you to be one of them. Emily furrowed her brow. Why? I'm just a kid who thinks too much. Amanda looked at her. Exactly. And the world needs that right now. Emily hesitated. She had never flown before. Never left Ohio. The idea of speaking in front of a crowd made her stomach twist. What if I freeze? What if they laugh? Amanda knelt and took her hand. Then you'll breathe. And you'll say what's true. That's all you've ever had to do. Emily finally agreed. Not for fame, not for exposure. But because there was something in her chest she needed to say, and maybe, just maybe, someone important would hear it. They booked cheap flights. Amanda borrowed a laptop to help Emily organize her thoughts. They worked late into the night, editing, rewriting, questioning everything. Emily refused to write a speech. I'll talk from my heart, she said. That's the only way it'll be real. And Amanda believed her. As the departure date neared, Emily grew quieter. She spent more time staring out the window, more time sketching abstract ideas in the margins of her notebooks. She started asking different questions, not about how things worked, but why humans make the choices we do. If we know how to fix things, why don't we? She asked one evening. Amanda didn't have an answer. Emily smiled sadly. Maybe that's why intelligence isn't enough. The night before they left, Amanda found Emily awake at 2 a.m., sitting on the porch with a flashlight and a notebook. I'm scared, Emily whispered. I'm not scared of speaking. I'm scared they'll listen and still not care. Amanda pulled her close. Then you speak anyway. Because truth isn't about what people do with it. It's about planting it where it needs to grow. Emily nodded. And in that moment, the girl who had memorized black hole mechanics, who could explain time dilation and simulate evolutionary paths in code, simply leaned her head against her mother's shoulder and closed her eyes. She was still a child. A fragile, brilliant, burdened little girl. But something inside her had already decided, if the world wanted to hear what she had to say, she would make every word count. Emily Carter didn't have friends in the way most children did. There were no sleepovers, no giggly recess games, no glittery journals passed between classmates. What she had instead were equations, questions, and the kind of isolation that even adults can't always name. From the outside, she looked like an average little girl, petite, ponytailed, slightly awkward in public settings, but beneath her quiet demeanor was a mind that refused to stop moving. While other kids played tag or argued over who got to be first in line, Emily was mapping neural patterns, watching satellite footage of weather systems, or listening to audio recordings of whale songs slowed down 400% to study their frequency modulations. Her world didn't revolve around toys or trends, it spun around questions. And not simple questions like why is the sky blue or where do babies come from, but seismic, soul-rattling ones: why do humans self-destruct? Could consciousness exist without biology? Do numbers have shadows? Amanda had tried at first to create balance, enrolling her daughter in a dance class, setting up playdates, trying to introduce her to the rhythm of normal life. But it never quite clicked. Emily would show up to ballet class and spend half the time asking the teacher about balance and gravitational pull. At birthday parties, she would eat a slice of cake and quietly ask the adults if they believed time had a texture. Eventually, the invitations stopped coming. Parents began to whisper, polite, restrained confusion about the genius girl who didn't know how to be a kid. Emily noticed, of course. She wasn't oblivious. She just chose not to let it bother her, at least on the surface. Inside, it chipped away at something delicate. At night, Amanda would sometimes hear her crying softly in her room, whispering to herself, I don't want to be weird. I just want to find someone who thinks like me. That broke Amanda's heart. She could teach Emily almost anything. Physics, ethics, advanced math, but she couldn't give her the one thing she needed most, a peer. Someone who wouldn't flinch when she said things like, I think emotions are data, but the problem is we never clean the input. Amanda tried support groups, reached out to other parents of gifted children, and even enrolled in forums for asynchronous development. She learned that kids like Emily, those with extremely high IQs paired with deep emotional insight, often struggled with loneliness. Their minds lived years ahead of their bodies, and the result was a perpetual state of alienation. Emily, at 10, could argue moral philosophy with graduate students, but couldn't figure out how to join a dodgeball game without panic. She once asked Amanda, is it my brain that's big, or is it the world that's too small? Amanda had no answer. So she built a different kind of childhood for her daughter, one filled with curiosity instead of conformity. They took weekend road trips to museums no one had heard of. They made up games involving quantum paradoxes. They had kitchen debates over whether artificial intelligence should have civil rights. Emily thrived in this environment, even if it didn't fit the mold. But the ache never fully went away. Sometimes she would lie on her bed, arms folded behind her head, staring at the ceiling like it was a map to something she hadn't figured out yet. What if I never find anyone who understands me, she asked one night. Amanda sat beside her and said, you will. You just have to look in stranger places. That night, Emily stayed up reading about black holes, specifically about gravitational lensing and time dilation. She said it helped, knowing that even the universe had parts that bent and warped in ways that didn't make sense until you changed your perspective. That was how she survived childhood, not by fitting in, but by reframing the world. Emily built simulations on her old laptop, modeling how languages evolved across isolated tribes. She created an emotional AI chatbot named Soma that learned to identify human sarcasm by reading movie scripts. She wrote poetry that rhymed in Fibonacci sequences. But most of all, she watched. She was an observer, absorbing the behaviors of people around her, especially the quiet, unnoticed moments. She once told Amanda, "People are like puzzles, but most of them hide the corners." When her uncle came to visit from Detroit, a man with a booming laugh and a love of stock market trends, he tried to connect with Emily by gifting her a drone kit. She thanked him politely but spent most of the visit asking him why he believed in capitalism if it required someone to always lose. He chuckled uncomfortably and changed the subject. After he left, Amanda asked Emily if she could maybe try to tone it down sometimes. "Why?" Emily asked. "I wasn't trying to make him uncomfortable. I just wanted to understand." Amanda sighed. "Because sometimes people don't want to be understood. They just want to be accepted." Emily frowned. "But that's backwards. You can't accept something you don't understand." That line stayed with Amanda for weeks. Emily's emotional intelligence was as potent as her analytical mind, but it operated differently, less obvious, more internal. She could read body language with eerie precision, sense discomfort before it registered in facial expressions, and intuit unspoken thoughts just from the way someone shifted in their chair. But translating all that into connection? That remained a mystery. Emily wrote a journal entry once that Amanda found while changing the sheets. "Sometimes I feel like I'm speaking a language nobody else was taught. And I'm not angry. I just want to know if someone out there has the same accent." That journal became a secret outlet for Emily, filled with not just equations and theories, but feelings, raw, untamed ones. She wrote about her father's absence, about the time she overheard a neighbor say she was probably on the spectrum, about her fear that someday her mind would grow too heavy for her to carry. Amanda wanted to wrap her in a bubble and shield her from the world, but she knew that wasn't the answer. What Emily needed wasn't protection, it was direction. She needed to find a place where her difference wasn't a burden but a gift. And so when the invitation came from the American Future Foundation, Amanda knew this might be the first step toward that place. Emily didn't accept right away. She spent 2 days thinking. Not because she was scared of failure, but because she didn't want to be used. What if they're just putting me up there to make headlines? "Look at the genius freak," she said bitterly. Amanda assured her it was real. That people wanted to hear what she had to say. That maybe, just maybe, there were others out there who would hear her and recognize something they'd been missing in themselves. Emily nodded, still cautious, still not fully convinced. But the thought lingered, that her words might be more than just echoes bouncing off bedroom walls. That they might actually land somewhere and matter. So she said yes. And for the first time in her life, she packed a suitcase, not just with clothes and books, but with hope. Hope that somewhere in a city far from cornfields and classrooms, she might find her accent spoken back to her. Not in the voice of another child, or a teacher, but in someone unexpected. Someone who might not understand her completely, but who would listen anyway. Someone who, like her, had never really belonged in one world, so they built their own. It was a gray, slushy morning in February when Amanda Carter opened her inbox and saw the subject line that made her heart skip. The message was short, formal, and barely a paragraph long, but every word landed with the weight of a lightning bolt. "Dear Mrs. Carter, we are pleased to invite your daughter Emily Carter to speak at the American Future Foundation Summit in Austin, Texas, under the keynote theme, The Next Decade of Thought." Emily was nominated by a panel of educators and scientists who reviewed her publicly published blog and simulation work. "We would be honored to have her present a 10-minute talk on a subject of her choosing. The event will include leading figures in technology, philosophy, and science, including a surprise guest, confirmed to be Mr. Elon Musk. We look forward to your response. Respectfully, the AFF Planning Committee." Amanda stared at the screen, blinking, rereading the message 3 times to be sure it was real. She checked the address. Verified the names. Followed the official link and scanned the summit's website. It was legitimate. She didn't scream or cry, though the moment begged for that kind of drama. She simply stood up, walked into the living room where Emily was seated cross-legged with a book titled The Moral Consequences of Economic Growth, and held out the laptop. "You got invited to speak at a summit," she said. Emily looked up, blinked twice, and took the computer. She read the message silently. No gasp. No grin. Just a stillness that Amanda had come to recognize as something deeper. Emily's mind was already processing, considering every angle before speaking. "Do you think they actually want to hear what I have to say?" she asked after a full minute. "Or do they just want a prodigy to show off?" Amanda sat beside her. "I think they want both. And that's okay. You just have to decide whether it's worth saying something real, even if some people are only there to clap for the wrong reason." Emily nodded slowly. "Elon Musk will be there?" she asked, rereading that line. "It says he's a surprise guest," Amanda said. "Though I guess the surprise is ruined now." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. "He's not the kind of person I thought would care about kids like me." Amanda tilted her head. "Why do you say that?" Emily shrugged. "He builds things. Big things. Expensive things. He talks about humanity like a math equation. I'm not sure he sees people. I think he sees potential." Amanda didn't answer. Emily had been forming opinions like that since she was 7, sharp, introspective, often painfully accurate. Still, this wasn't just a chance to meet a billionaire. It was a chance to speak. A chance to put her voice into a room full of people who helped shape the future. For the next few days, Emily didn't mention the summit. She continued reading, coding, helping Amanda cook, tending to her small tomato plant in the window. But Amanda noticed the shift. She stayed up later. Scribbled in her journal more. Once, Amanda found her watching a late-night TED Talk on the psychology of influence and muttering, "What makes people change their minds? Not facts. Not force. It's something softer. Something that feels like a mirror." A week later, she came to Amanda and said, "I want to go. But I'm not going to write a speech. I'm going to speak how I think. That's the only way I know how to be useful." Amanda nodded. She didn't try to convince her to prepare more traditionally. Emily's process was unorthodox, but it was hers, and it worked. They began preparing for the trip. Amanda borrowed a laptop from the local library so Emily could gather her thoughts digitally. They printed the necessary forms, checked flight prices, found a modest Airbnb 20 minutes from the conference venue. It was more money than they could afford, but Amanda cashed out a small savings bond Jack had left behind. He would have wanted this, she told herself as she clicked the booking confirmation. Emily researched Elon Musk more thoroughly. She read his biographies, parsed through his controversial tweets, analyzed interviews. "He's brilliant," she admitted, "but he treats the world like a prototype. I wonder if he ever just listens." She watched a clip where he said AI could be more dangerous than nuclear weapons and another where he laughed nervously after being asked about happiness. "He doesn't seem happy," she said. "He seems like he's running away from something invisible." Amanda wasn't sure what to say. She was amazed by how her daughter could see through public figures, past their achievements and into their contradictions. She wondered what it would be like to meet someone like Elon Musk not as a fan, but as a question. That's what Emily did, she questioned everything. Not to be difficult. But because she was seeking something true, something that didn't change depending on who was asking. A week before they were due to fly out, Emily asked Amanda, "Do I need to impress him?" Amanda shook her head. "No, baby. You need to be you. The girl who made a chatbot cry. The girl who told her teacher numbers could dream. That's more impressive than any science fair project." Emily didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped slightly. That meant she believed it. They packed simply. 2 small bags. A folder with ID papers and notes. A notebook. A scarf Jack had given Amanda years ago that Emily wanted to wear on stage, for luck. On the night before the flight, Emily couldn't sleep. She stood by the window in her pajamas, watching the stars. Amanda joined her, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. Emily spoke without turning. I feel like this is the beginning of something. But I don't know what. Amanda sipped her tea. Most beginnings don't feel like beginnings. They feel like confusion. Fear. Quiet. Emily nodded. What if I say the wrong thing? What if he laughs? Amanda touched her shoulder. Then you keep speaking. Because if you only speak to be agreed with, you'll never say anything new. Emily turned and hugged her mother, quickly, tightly. Then she whispered, I want to say something he can't ignore. The next morning, they left Ohio under a cloudy sky. The airport was crowded, loud, a blur of plastic bins and security lines. Emily was unusually quiet, gripping her backpack tightly as if it were the only anchor she had. On the plane, she looked out the window, whispering facts about air pressure and altitude, grounding herself in logic to calm her racing thoughts. Amanda watched her daughter's reflection in the tiny oval glass, and for the first time, truly understood what it meant to carry something brilliant and fragile at the same time. Emily wasn't just smart. She was sensitive in a way that made the world cut deeper. That was the real reason she needed to be heard. Not for applause. But because people like her, those who see beyond data, who ask why instead of just how, were the ones who could change the course of everything. They landed in Austin that afternoon. Warm air. A city humming with tech, startups, and electric scooters. Their Airbnb was small but clean. Emily set up her borrowed laptop and began reviewing a file of quotes she'd compiled, her own thoughts next to philosophers, scientists, and poets. Amanda watched her type something, pause, then delete. Trying to figure out the opening, Emily muttered. It has to catch attention. But not sound like I'm trying too hard. Amanda walked over. On the screen, one line remained, what if intelligence is the wrong metric for leadership? Emily looked up. Too aggressive? Amanda smiled. It's perfect. That night, neither of them slept well. But neither of them needed to. The moment was already set in motion. The email that changed everything had done more than invite a child to speak. It had cracked open a door between one world and another. And Emily Carter was about to walk through it. The morning of the summit felt like standing at the edge of a cliff while the world dared you to jump. Emily Carter woke before dawn, the faint Texas light creeping through the thin curtains of their Airbnb. She had barely slept, her mind spinning all night with imagined scenarios, technical issues, blanking on stage, saying something that sounded profound in her head but fell flat in front of an audience. She lay still for a moment, her hands folded across her stomach, counting heartbeats. In. Out. 4 seconds. Then she sat up and opened her notebook. No rehearsed speech. No bullet points. Just a series of thoughts she wanted to shape in real time, based on how the room felt. That was how her brain worked best, fluid, adaptive, alive in the moment. She wrote a single phrase at the top of the page, if intelligence has no compass, does it still count as progress? Amanda was already in the kitchen, making toast and warming up a tiny pot of oatmeal. The place smelled like cinnamon and nerves. How are you feeling? She asked as Emily padded in, wrapped in the oversized scarf that once belonged to her father. Emily shrugged. Like Schrodinger's cat. Both terrified and fine until the box opens. Amanda chuckled softly. Well, let's hope the audience doesn't collapse your wave function too harshly. Emily sat at the table, pushing the oatmeal around with her spoon. Do I look too much like a kid? She asked. Amanda tilted her head. You are a kid. But you don't speak like one. That contrast is your secret weapon. Emily nodded. I just don't want them to think I'm trying to sound smart. This is how I think. Amanda placed a hand on hers. And that's exactly what they need to hear. After breakfast, they packed up. Amanda carried the laptop and charger. Emily held her notebook and a small, worn model of the solar system she'd made when she was 8, the kind with little foam planets dangling from wires. She'd decided not to show it, just to keep it in her bag like a quiet reminder. They caught a ride share to the venue, a sleek glass building that looked like it had grown out of a design magazine. Inside, the buzz was immediate, technologists with lanyards, engineers clutching coffee, panels titled with phrases like neural networks and consciousness and bioethical parameters for post-human evolution. Emily's heart beat louder with every step. Most of the people there were older, confident, already speaking in tight clusters. Amanda squeezed her shoulder gently. You belong here, she whispered. Emily nodded, but her eyes kept moving, tracking every expression, every microbehavior in the crowd. Then someone approached them. You must be Emily Carter, said a young woman with a clipboard and a bright AFF Summit badge. We're so excited you're here. Your presentation is in Hall B at 11. You'll go up right after the keynote from Dr. Winslow. Emily managed a polite smile. Okay. Thank you. Amanda handled the check-in, badges, and schedule. Emily drifted over to a display on AI empathy models. A digital screen blinked with a quote she'd read before, "We must teach machines not just to think, but to care." She stared at it. Then she whispered, "And we must teach humans the same." At 10:15, they were led to the speaker prep area. It was a quiet corridor behind the main halls, lined with mirrors, bottled water, and chairs. Emily sat and watched as adults nervously shuffled papers, practiced greetings, or muttered statistics under their breath. No one looked at her. No one expected anything from a girl with tangled hair and sneakers. That was fine. Emily didn't want expectations. She wanted to speak before people knew they needed to listen. Amanda sat beside her. Deep breath, she said. Emily nodded. I know. Box breathing. 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold. Repeat. They sat in silence for a moment. Then a staff member waved them over. Hall B. You're up next. Emily followed, her legs suddenly heavier. The hallway curved into a large room filled with chairs and faces and digital screens. Dr. Winslow, a renowned neuroethicist, was finishing her talk about memory implants. Emily caught the tail end, and if we tamper with memory, we must first ask if we're tampering with identity. Applause. Polite. Measured. Then came the introduction. And now, we welcome a unique voice to the stage. She's not a graduate student or a Silicon Valley investor. She's 10 years old. But trust me, you'll remember her name after today. Please welcome Emily Carter. A beat. Then applause. More curious than enthusiastic. She stepped forward, small and calm, adjusting the mic on her own without help. The scarf dangled gently. Her eyes scanned the room. So many adults. Some looking at their phones. Some looking at her like she was a novelty. A few with arms crossed. She smiled, but only a little. I know what you're thinking, she said. What is a child doing here? Talking about ethics, intelligence, and the future. Murmurs. Some laughter. She waited. I used to think intelligence was the most important thing. That being smart was the key to making everything better. But the more I read, the more I studied, the more I realized something strange. We're getting smarter. But we're not getting kinder. That quieted the room. Heads lifted. Phones lowered. We measure intelligence with numbers. IQ scores. Test results. Algorithms. But we don't have a test for empathy. We don't have metrics for wisdom. So we keep building things, faster processors, smarter bots, louder rockets, without asking why. Or who it's for. Or what happens when the smartest machine in the room has no soul. Silence. Deep now. When I was 6, my dad died. And I kept thinking, if we can land rovers on Mars, why can't we stop one truck from running a red light? It made me ask, is knowledge really power if it can't protect what we love? Amanda felt her throat tighten. Emily's voice didn't shake. I'm not here to show off facts. I'm here to ask a question. One I don't know the answer to. One I think we all need to think about together. She paused, looked straight into the crowd. If intelligence doesn't make us better to each other, then what is it for? Stillness. And then, slowly, applause. Building. Rising. Amanda stood in the wings, frozen, watching as the crowd erupted into something real. Not performative. Not polite. But moved. People stood. Cameras flashed. Even Dr. Winslow was nodding, tears in her eyes. And then, just for a moment, Amanda saw him. Back of the room. Arms folded. Face unreadable. Elon Musk. Watching. And not blinking. Emily stepped back, bowed her head slightly, then walked off stage and into her mother's arms. You did it, Amanda whispered. Emily shook her head. No. I just started something. And she had no idea where it would lead. He didn't approach her right away. Elon Musk stood at the back of the room, just beyond the exit doors, his expression unreadable but his eyes locked onto the 10-year-old girl who had just left the stage. Around him, the usual swarm of handlers, assistants, and curious onlookers buzzed and orbited, but Elon barely noticed. He had heard thousands of presentations, many from people with advanced degrees, powerful reputations, massive companies behind them. But none of those talks had cracked through his mental firewall the way Emily Carter's did. She hadn't pitched a startup or a moonshot. She'd posed a question, one he had successfully avoided for years by drowning himself in systems and progress and billion-dollar goals. Now, that question was lodged in his mind like a splinter. If intelligence doesn't make us better to each other, then what is it for? He waited. Quietly. Observing. When Emily and Amanda finally left the backstage area and made their way toward the speaker's lounge, Elon gave a small nod to his assistant and slipped away from the crowd. He took a different corridor, bypassing a group of tech influencers live streaming their commentary, and moved toward the side hallway where the speakers were led to exit. Amanda was helping Emily untie her scarf, whispering something soft, a mother's voice in a storm of noise. Emily glanced down at the notebook still in her hand, as if afraid the words she'd spoken might escape if she let go of it. Then she looked up, and saw him. Elon Musk. Standing a few feet away. No camera crew. No entourage. Just him. For a moment, neither said anything. Amanda straightened slightly, instinctively protective, but not alarmed. Elon took one step closer. That was the most important question I've heard all year, he said calmly, without his usual smirk or posturing. Emily blinked. Thank you, she said. It wasn't meant to be a performance. Elon nodded. It wasn't. That's what made it dangerous. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Dangerous? He glanced at her. Truth usually is. Then he looked back at Emily. Can I talk to you for a minute? Amanda hesitated, but Emily surprised her by saying, okay. Elon led them to a quiet alcove near the end of the hallway, next to an unused service elevator. No one else around. No cameras. Just a billionaire and a child, face to face, like equals. You said intelligence without empathy is meaningless, he began. What made you say that? Emily shrugged slightly. I didn't mean it as an accusation. Just an observation. Everyone here talks about optimizing the future. But they don't ask who gets left behind when they do. Elon tilted his head. And who do you think gets left behind? Anyone who doesn't fit the metric, she said. People who feel too much. People who aren't useful to an algorithm. Kids like me, until 5 minutes ago. Elon didn't respond immediately. He studied her. Most people look at me like I'm the future, he said. They think I've figured it out. Mars, AI, electric cars. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just accelerating toward a wall no one else sees yet. Emily looked at him seriously. You can build anything. But you can't build meaning. That has to be grown. He exhaled. It wasn't dramatic, but it was the first honest sign of fatigue Amanda had seen on his face. You remind me of someone I used to be, he said. Before the money. Before I started speaking in sound bites. Emily tilted her head. Why did you stop? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because it hurt too much to ask the big questions and still not have answers. Amanda gently interrupted. Mr. Musk, I hope you're not here just to give her another platform. She's not a mascot. She doesn't want to be famous. He nodded. I understand. But I'm not here to make her famous. I'm here to ask if she wants to change something with me. Emily raised an eyebrow. Change what? The way we talk about progress, he said. I've been pushing for speed, efficiency, disruption. But maybe it's time someone else talked about wisdom. About emotional infrastructure. If I gave you a stage, one you could use on your terms, would you take it? Emily didn't answer right away. She was quiet for so long that Amanda started to step in again, but Emily held up a hand gently. Then she looked Elon straight in the eyes and said, only if I get to decide what matters. Elon nodded slowly. Deal. That was the beginning. What followed was a blur, conversations behind closed doors, offers made without contracts, Elon sending one of his top advisors to meet with Amanda and Emily the next day at a small Austin cafe. They talked about a project Elon had been toying with for months, something experimental, still unannounced, a think tank driven not by legacy thinkers but by original minds, people with unconventional intelligence and vision. It would be called Helix. Not a company. Not a foundation. More like a living question. Elon wanted Emily to be part of it, not as a figurehead, but as a core member, someone who challenged assumptions and introduced ideas the adults were too proud or too blind to see. Amanda was hesitant. Protective. She grilled the advisor on safety, transparency, education. But Emily remained steady. I don't want special treatment, she said. I want a seat where the decisions get made before the blueprints even exist. Elon's team agreed. The deal was informal, but real. No contracts. Just mutual respect and one condition from Emily, she wouldn't stop being a kid. She'd still go home to Ohio, still read in her pajamas, still tend to her tomato plant. Helix wouldn't own her. It would just listen. And then, less than a week after the summit, Elon tweeted about her. Just one line. No video. No links. Just, she's 10. Her IQ is 162. But it's her question that haunts me. Emily Carter, thank you. It went viral in under 3 minutes. The media avalanche followed. News outlets asked for interviews. Podcasts begged for guest appearances. A few tabloid sites speculated whether she was being groomed by Musk for some master plan. Amanda turned down 90% of the requests. Emily didn't care. She was already working. Not on a product, but on a paper, one that would eventually be titled, The Empathy Gap in Technological Acceleration. Elon read the draft and told her it reminded him of Asimov. Emily replied, "I'm not writing sci-fi. I'm writing what I want the future to regret not doing sooner." He smiled at that. For the first time in years, he felt the faint pulse of humility. This girl wasn't like anyone else he'd met. Not just because she was gifted, but because she didn't care who was impressed. She was dangerous in the way only truth could be. And for once, he wasn't interested in launching something. He was interested in listening. Because when she spoke, even Elon Musk didn't have an answer. It didn't hit immediately. When Emily and Amanda returned home to Ohio 2 days after the summit, the streets were still quiet, the air still carried that damp early spring chill, and the world outside their little apartment hadn't changed. But inside, everything had. The first sign came when they landed at the airport. A woman in her 20s, eyes wide, nervously approached them near baggage claim and whispered, "Are you the girl Elon Musk tweeted about?" Emily gave a polite nod, unsure whether to smile or retreat. The woman didn't press, just said, "You gave me goosebumps." "Thank you," then turned and disappeared into the crowd. It was disorienting. Amanda could feel her daughter withdrawing already, recoiling from attention she never asked for. By the time they reached home, the inbox was flooded. Emails from journalists. Podcast invitations. TEDx coordinators. Nonprofits offering honorary roles. A box arrived the next morning from a think tank in New York. It had a scholarship certificate, 2 books on moral philosophy, and a note that read, "For the young mind who reminded us what genius is for." And then came the segment on the nightly news. They used a clip from her AFF talk, paired with dramatic music and a headline that said, "Elon Musk mentored by a 10-year-old." Emily winced when she saw it. "They're making it about him," she said flatly. "It's like I'm a character in his movie." Amanda muted the TV. That's what media does. It rewrites the story to fit their narrative. We can't stop that. But we can choose what we do next. Emily sat in silence for a long time that night. She stared at her old notebooks, reread her own blog posts, looked at the photos she'd taken of her dad's worn-out books and the little solar system model still dangling above her desk. And then, finally, she said, "I need to control the way I'm seen. Not so I can be famous. So I'm not erased." Amanda understood. So they created a simple website. No photos. No bio beyond her first name, age, and a single sentence, "I believe questions are more important than products." Then they added a section titled Letters, where Emily could post open responses to the questions she wanted to answer, on ethics, on AI, on education, on grief, on leadership. And people began to read. Thousands at first. Then tens of thousands. Comments poured in, not just from tech professionals but from schoolteachers, college students, even a few CEOs. One letter she wrote titled, "Progress is not a straight line," was reprinted in 3 major magazines. Another, "Why I Don't Want to Be a Prodigy," became the subject of a classroom debate in a university in Boston. But with the attention came the shadows. A video blogger accused Amanda of exploiting her daughter for fame. Another claimed Emily was clearly coached and probably part of some larger publicity stunt. A tech influencer posted a reaction video critiquing her AFF speech, saying it was naive and idealistic and had 0 actionable data. Amanda wanted to respond, to defend her. But Emily shook her head. "If I argue, I lose," she said. "I'll just keep writing." Meanwhile, Elon reached out again, this time with a private invitation to visit one of his labs in Texas. "I want her to see what we're building," he told Amanda. "Maybe she'll see something we missed." Amanda hesitated, but Emily was curious. "Not because I want to be part of it," she clarified. "Because I want to see how it works. From the inside." The visit was arranged quietly. No press. No tweets. Just a weekend trip, this time to a sleek, humming facility filled with prototypes, engineers, simulations, and models of things that hadn't yet been released to the public. Emily moved through the lab like a detective, not wide-eyed, not giddy. Focused. Observant. She asked questions no one expected. Why are these neural interfaces designed for speed but not sensory comfort? Who decides how long a human should be in control before the AI takes over? How do you test for emotional fallout in your beta users? Elon trailed behind her, watching the way she moved, the way she spoke to the engineers, not to challenge them, but to expand the frame they were thinking inside. One of them whispered to another, "She's not a prodigy. She's a philosopher trapped in a kid's body." That night, back at their hotel, Emily wrote a new letter. "We treat machines like tools, but sometimes I think we're the ones being programmed. Not by code. By speed. By power. By goals we didn't stop to question." Elon read it the next morning. He didn't say anything. But Amanda noticed the way he lingered on the page. Fame kept growing. A short documentary was released on YouTube profiling her story. It went viral, 12 million views in a week. They filmed Amanda's apartment, interviewed her teachers, and used footage from the summit. Emily agreed to it only after the filmmakers promised to avoid dramatization. Still, when she saw the final cut, she looked uncomfortable. "They made it look like I had an epiphany," she said. "Like I suddenly changed the world. But I didn't. I just said something that shouldn't be considered rare." Amanda squeezed her hand. "Maybe that's the whole point. That it is rare. And it shouldn't be." A university in California offered her honorary admission. An educational startup offered to fund her research for the next 5 years. Elon's advisor called with an invitation to join a panel on the future of human-AI collaboration. Emily declined most of them. "I'm not ready to be a voice of a generation," she told Amanda. "I'm still figuring out what kind of voice I even have." And yet, she knew she couldn't hide forever. The more she tried to retreat, the more people projected onto her. Some called her a prophet. Others said she was just lucky. A few said she was being used. Only a small handful seemed to see her for what she truly was, a kid, deeply curious, unerringly honest, unwilling to conform to a narrative she didn't believe in. And still, despite it all, she stayed centered. She played with her neighbor's cat. She helped Amanda paint the kitchen. She read sci-fi novels late into the night and emailed back and forth with a girl in Denmark who wanted to build an AI that could recognize loneliness. One morning, a letter came in the mail. Not email, physical mail. Handwritten, in cursive. No return address. Just the words, "Your voice shook something awake in me. I'm a retired robotics engineer. I've spent my life building things that were efficient but never kind. I want to help you build something kind." Emily held the letter for a long time. "Maybe that's what all this is for," she said. "Not fame. Not attention. Just to find the others." Amanda nodded. "The others who believe empathy is a kind of intelligence, too." And Emily smiled, not because she was happy, exactly, but because she felt less alone. She didn't know what would come next. But she knew she had a voice now. And the world was, however briefly, listening. It arrived in a simple, white envelope with no return address, just Emily's name written in sharp, elegant handwriting. Not printed. Not typed. Handwritten, like a secret whispered into paper. Amanda almost tossed it aside, assuming it was another media pitch or a well-meaning letter from a fan. But Emily stopped her. "Wait," she said, eyes narrowed. "That looks different." She held the envelope for a long moment, studying it, feeling the weight in her hand. Something about it made her heart beat faster, not fear, but anticipation. Carefully, she opened it. Inside was a letter, 2 pages long, written on thick, cream-colored stationery with a subtle watermark she couldn't quite identify. The signature at the bottom wasn't typed either. It read, Dr. Evelyn Grant, Director, Polaris Foundation. Emily had never heard of it. She read the letter twice before speaking. Amanda watched her closely, waiting. Finally, Emily said, they want to meet. In person. In Vermont. No press. No cameras. Just, me. Amanda's eyebrows furrowed. Who's they? Emily handed her the letter. Amanda scanned it quickly. The language was formal, but not corporate. It didn't gush. It didn't flatter. It said, simply, that the Polaris Foundation had been watching Emily's work quietly. They described themselves as, an anonymous collective of scientists, educators, and ethicists dedicated to preserving long-term human values in a time of exponential change. They had been founded decades ago but operated entirely off the grid. No website, no social media, no public presence. And now, for the first time in 20 years, they wanted to invite someone new. Someone young. Someone who hadn't yet been absorbed by the noise. This feels strange, Amanda said carefully. Why now? Emily was already researching. They're real, she said. There's one article from 10 years ago that mentions them, barely. A footnote in an academic paper on post-collapse scenario planning. Nothing since. Amanda sat down, the letter still in her hand. It sounds like a cult, she muttered. Emily shook her head. No. It sounds like a brain trust. A real one. Not some billionaire ego trip. Amanda looked up sharply. So what do they want from you? Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think they want someone to challenge their own ideas. Someone not stuck in their echo chamber. Amanda sighed. And you want to go? It wasn't a question. Emily nodded slowly. Only if you come too. The Polaris Foundation agreed. Travel arrangements were made without any need for names. 2 first-class train tickets to a rural station in Vermont, followed by a black SUV with no logo waiting on arrival. No itinerary. No speeches. Just coordinates. It was the strangest invitation either of them had ever received. But there was something about the way the letter was written, clear, precise, unassuming, that made Emily trust it. When the day came, they packed light. Amanda brought a journal, a coat, and the charger for her phone, though she suspected service would be unreliable. Emily brought her notebook, a pair of headphones, and a book by Carl Sagan. The train ride was quiet. Snow dusted the edges of the tracks as they moved north, the scenery shifting from cityscape to forest. By the time they arrived, it was nearly dark. The SUV was waiting, just as promised. A tall man in his 60s stepped out and nodded. Ms. Carter, Ms. Whitman. Welcome. No badge. No small talk. Just quiet efficiency. They drove for nearly an hour through winding mountain roads, deeper and deeper into pine country. Finally, they reached a gate, steel, silent, almost invisible in the dark. It opened without sound, and the SUV slipped through. What waited on the other side was not a bunker or a compound but a large stone house, modern yet warm, nestled between trees that had stood longer than any human in the car had been alive. Inside, they were greeted by a small group, 5 individuals, diverse in age and background. No one introduced themselves with titles. No one asked for photos. One woman, with silver hair and deep-set eyes, extended her hand. Thank you for coming, Emily, she said. We don't offer this lightly. Emily nodded, unsure what to say. Amanda stood slightly behind her, alert but open. They were led to a small room, fireplace, shelves lined with old books, soft leather chairs. Tea was brought in. Then silence. And finally, the woman, Dr. Evelyn Grant, as Emily suspected, spoke. "We've been watching your rise. Not through media. Through your writing. Through your choices. Through what you say no to." Emily listened. "We were founded in 1979, Dr. Grant continued. After one of our own helped build a system that led to unintended harm. He realized too late that intelligence alone does not equal wisdom. Since then, we've kept a small circle, scientists, ethicists, thinkers who want to slow things down. Not stop progress. But temper it." Emily frowned slightly. "Why now? Why me?" Dr. Grant leaned forward. "Because we've reached a point where the world is listening to loud voices. Innovators. Visionaries. Disruptors. But not reflectors. Not questioners. You ask the questions we forgot to ask ourselves. And you're not interested in selling anything." Amanda interjected gently. "You realize she's 10 years old?" Dr. Grant smiled softly. "Yes. And more grounded than most people 10 times her age. We don't want to use her. We want to learn with her." Another man spoke, middle-aged, with an accent Emily couldn't place. "We've invited you to observe. To offer perspective. To sit in on conversations that shape ideas before they become movements. And if you choose, to shape them with us." Emily sat in silence. The fire crackled. Her thoughts raced. She wasn't used to being invited to listen. She was usually the one asked to speak. This was different. She looked at Amanda. Amanda nodded slowly. "We stay together. No contracts. No obligations." Dr. Grant nodded. "Of course." And so, they stayed. 3 days turned into a week. Emily sat in on sessions where AI researchers debated the ethics of sentient code. She listened to a philosopher and a neuroscientist argue over free will and predictability. She was allowed to speak, but never pressured to. When she did, everyone listened, not because of her age, but because of her clarity. "We keep trying to build perfect systems," she said during one meeting. "But what if imperfection is what keeps us human?" One of the members wrote it on the whiteboard and circled it 3 times. Amanda watched it all with cautious wonder. These people weren't famous. They weren't powerful in the traditional sense. But they were serious. And deeply aware of the weight their ideas could carry. On the final night, Dr. Grant took Emily aside. "You have a voice the world needs. Not just because you're young. Because you're clear. We'd like to fund a space for you. A private research and reflection hub. No strings. You decide how it works." Emily was stunned. "Why me?" Dr. Grant's answer was simple. "Because you're not trying to be anyone but yourself. That's rare. And it's powerful." Emily didn't answer right away. She thought about her tomato plant. About her best friend in school who still thought space was boring. About the solar system model hanging from her ceiling. And finally, she said, "Only if it stays quiet. No branding. No hype. Just work." Dr. Grant nodded. Agreed. When they returned to Ohio, nothing looked different. But everything had changed. Emily had been invited into a hidden room beneath the surface of the world, one that wasn't powered by fame or speed, but by thought. And now she had a new kind of choice. Not about attention. But about direction. And she wasn't sure yet which way to go. Returning home from Vermont, Emily felt the weight of unseen eyes more keenly than ever. The Polaris Foundation's invitation was meant to be confidential, but secrets in a world hungry for sensation rarely stayed buried. Within days, subtle shifts rippled through the digital ecosystem where Emily's presence lingered. Anonymous forums buzzed with speculation. Threads popped up debating her true motives. Was she a prodigy or a plant? A voice of reason or a puppet? The whispers grew louder, not in newspapers or mainstream outlets, but in the shadows where influence was wielded quietly. Amanda noticed first. One afternoon, while scrolling through Emily's message board, she paused at a comment signed simply, "Shadow Logic, the girl is a distraction, a well-crafted narrative to redirect attention from real issues. Trust no one who arrives on a train with black SUVs." Amanda showed it to Emily, who read the words carefully, then closed her laptop with a faint sigh. "The louder they get, the less I want to speak," Emily admitted. Amanda frowned, protective but resigned. "You can't let them win by silence." But Emily's gaze was distant. Sometimes silence is the loudest voice. The whisper war had begun, not with guns or headlines, but with words designed to undermine and erase. Emails flooded Amanda's inbox, threatening, manipulative, trying to force Emily into the public eye on terms she didn't choose. A tech blog anonymously leaked supposed insider information claiming Emily's Polaris invitation was orchestrated by Elon Musk's PR team to soften his image after a recent scandal. Elon himself, who had once reached out with admiration, now remained conspicuously silent, fueling rumors. Emily's supporters rallied fiercely online, but their voices were drowned out by coordinated skepticism. Her letters, once shared widely, began to vanish from forums. Her website was shadow banned by search engines. Amanda watched helplessly as her daughter's fragile sanctuary was eroded piece by piece. One evening, Emily sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by scattered notes. "They're trying to make me invisible," she said softly. "Or worse, make people doubt I'm real." Amanda knelt beside her. "Then we have to prove you are." Together, they mapped out a plan, not to fight fire with fire, but to outreach shadows with light. Emily would keep writing but shift her approach. Instead of responding directly to critics, she'd tell stories, fictionalized but rooted in truth, that illustrated the very questions she believed mattered. Tales of empathy in the coldest systems. Stories about children who taught adults how to listen. Parables about machines that learned kindness. Slowly, her new work found its way into underground newsletters, independent zines, and private reading circles. It was less visible but more potent. Those who read her stories shared them quietly, like passing a secret torch. Meanwhile, Amanda reached out to an old friend, a cybersecurity expert named Marcus, who had helped protect whistleblowers and activists in the past. Marcus offered a digital shield, encryption, VPNs, anonymized posting, to keep Emily's voice from being erased. He also warned them of something worse: there's a pattern here. When ideas threaten entrenched power, the fight gets personal. The goal isn't just to discredit, but to break your will. Emily met Marcus once, in a small cafe filled with soft jazz and the scent of roasted coffee. He looked older than his years, with tired eyes but a steady presence. "You're not alone," he told her quietly. "But you have to be ready for how hard they'll push." As spring turned to summer, the battle continued in whispers. Emily's letters gained a new tone, less hopeful, more urgent. "Progress without reflection," she wrote, "is a machine running blindfolded. And the world feels its footsteps in every heartbreak." The Polaris Foundation members checked in regularly, offering encouragement without pressure. They respected her boundaries and never asked for public endorsements or appearances. But even they were not immune to the currents swirling around Emily. Dr. Grant once confided, "In our time, we've faced similar storms. Ideas that threaten the status quo always invite resistance. The question is, how do we keep the flame alive?" One night, Emily dreamt she was walking through a dense forest where every tree whispered a different version of her story, some distorted, some true, some half-remembered. She was both lost and found in the shifting voices, searching for a clearing where she could breathe. The next morning, she wrote a new letter: "We live in a world where truth is a battlefield and silence a refuge. But perhaps the greatest courage is to keep speaking even when the forest is filled with echoes that aren't yours." In school, things shifted too. Emily's classmates, once curious and supportive, now treated her with a mixture of awe and wariness. Some avoided her, fearing the storm she seemed to attract. Others whispered rumors about secret meetings and shadowy organizations. Emily noticed but didn't respond. Instead, she focused on what grounded her: Amanda, her dog Max, the small garden on their balcony. And on one clear evening, as stars blinked like distant fires, Elon Musk reached out again. But this time, it wasn't through Twitter or public channels. Instead, a handwritten note arrived, simple and direct: Emily, I've been watching. Not everything in the world moves as fast as we'd like. Maybe it shouldn't. Let's talk. Amanda and Emily read it together in silence. The whisper war hadn't ended. But now, a new conversation was beginning. And Emily knew one thing for sure: the fight wasn't just about being heard. It was about being understood. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily stared at the note from Elon Musk as if it was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. The handwriting was unmistakable, precise, hurried, but unmistakably his. After weeks of silence, after the digital shadows had tried to swallow her voice, this simple message reopened a door she thought was sealed. Amanda watched her daughter's eyes flicker with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "What will you do?" she asked softly. Emily folded the note carefully, almost reverently. "I have to meet him. But on my terms." Arranging the meeting was anything but simple. Elon's world was one of glass towers and guarded entrances, a place where time bent to the will of innovation and ambition. Yet Emily insisted on keeping the encounter informal, choosing a small cafe in Palo Alto rather than a sleek corporate office. The location was discreet, a quiet refuge where ideas could be exchanged without spectacle. The day arrived, warm and bright. Emily flew cross-country with Amanda, feeling the familiar thrill of a new challenge but also the weight of expectation. When they reached the cafe, Elon was already there, a stark contrast to his usual electric persona. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans, his hair slightly tousled as if he had just stepped out of a brainstorming session. He greeted Emily with a nod and a tentative smile. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said, voice lower than expected. "Not about rockets or AI. About your questions. The ones nobody else seems to ask." Emily studied him carefully. The man who had sent cars into space and dreamed of Mars wasn't just a titan of tech here, he was a man grappling with the consequences of his vision. "Why now?" she asked. Elon shrugged, almost sheepishly. "Because sometimes you realize the fastest path forward isn't the straightest. And maybe we need to slow down, ask the right questions before we jump." For the first time, Emily felt she wasn't talking to a billionaire or a public figure, but to a thinker willing to listen. They talked for hours, about progress and responsibility, about failures hidden behind headlines, about the human cost of innovation. Elon confessed to moments of doubt, to nights spent wondering if the race to the future had left something essential behind. Emily shared her own fears: the isolation, the pressure, the way ideas could be twisted in the wrong hands. Their conversation was a rare bridge between two worlds, one of vast power and one of youthful clarity. At one point, Elon asked, "What do you want from all this? From the attention, the foundation, the fight?" Emily paused, then said, "I want to make sure we don't lose ourselves in the chase. That the machines we build don't forget what it means to be human." Elon nodded slowly. "That's why I reached out. Because I need that reminder too." When the meeting ended, Emily felt a shift inside her. A blend of hope and realism. Elon wasn't a savior, and she wasn't a prodigy with all the answers. But together, they might find a way to steer a course that honored both innovation and humanity. Back home, Emily's letters took on a new tone. They reflected the dialogue she'd had, questions woven with humility, challenges wrapped in possibility. The digital whispers softened, replaced by genuine curiosity. Amanda noticed the change and smiled. "You found your voice," she said. But the unexpected meeting wasn't just a turning point for Emily. It sent ripples through the Polaris Foundation and the broader world of innovation. Conversations once held behind closed doors began to surface. Other thinkers reached out, inspired by the new model of dialogue Emily had embodied. The war of whispers wasn't over, but the balance was shifting. And in that shift lay the promise of something new. A future where questions mattered as much as answers, where courage was measured by the willingness to listen as much as to speak. The days after Emily's meeting with Elon Musk were unlike anything she had ever experienced. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting to see what would come next. News outlets picked up whispers of the encounter, though details remained sparse. What mattered was the message: a young mind and a titan of industry, speaking not about profit or power, but about the soul of progress. Emily found herself at the center of conversations that stretched beyond borders. Her letters, once confined to niche online communities, began to circulate internationally. Translations appeared in unexpected places, from a cafe in Paris to a library in Mumbai, from a tech hub in Berlin to a school in Sao Paulo. People connected with her questions and the way she framed the future as a collective responsibility. Teachers used her words to inspire students. Scientists quoted her during conferences. Artists incorporated her ideas into exhibitions. Amanda watched all this unfold with a mixture of pride and concern. "This isn't just attention," she told Emily one evening. "It's a responsibility. One you have to be ready for." Emily nodded, but the weight of it pressed heavily on her young shoulders. The whisper war, which had threatened to silence her, was transforming into something else, a wave of change that demanded careful navigation. In school, Emily's peers reacted in various ways. Some celebrated her newfound prominence, eager to be part of a story bigger than themselves. Others resented it, their jealousy thinly veiled behind forced smiles and distant glances. Emily kept her focus, anchored by Amanda's steady support and the quiet moments in her garden where she could simply be a kid. One afternoon, a letter arrived from a teacher in Japan named Ms. Tanaka. She wrote of her students gathering around the translated letters, debating the ethics of artificial intelligence, and dreaming of futures where technology served kindness instead of greed. "Your words," Ms. Tanaka said, "have sparked a fire in young hearts thousands of miles away." Emily reread the letter multiple times, her heart swelling with a mix of joy and humility. It was a reminder that her voice could reach beyond borders, but also a call to use that voice wisely. Meanwhile, the Polaris Foundation reached out with an invitation to speak at a confidential summit in Geneva. The gathering would bring together leaders from science, philosophy, government, and civil society to discuss the future of technology and humanity. Emily hesitated at first. The thought of standing among such giants was intimidating. But Amanda encouraged her. "You belong there," she said firmly. "Your questions matter." At the summit, Emily found herself among people who had shaped global policy and innovation for decades. Yet they listened intently when she spoke, not because of her fame, but because of her insight. She spoke about the need for balance, for humility, and for a future where technology reflected our highest values, not just our fastest ambitions. Her words sparked debates and reflections. Some challenged her optimism, others found it a much-needed antidote to cynicism. The summit's final communiqué echoed her call for inclusive dialogue and ethical foresight. Back home, Emily and Amanda continued to navigate the complexities of growing up in a spotlight that neither sought nor fully understood. They maintained their routines, school, friends, quiet evenings with family, but the world's gaze remained a constant presence. One night, Emily dreamed of a vast ocean, calm and deep. She was rowing a small boat alone, the stars guiding her path. The horizon was distant but glowing. She felt the weight of the oars and the lightness of hope intertwined. When she woke, she wrote a new letter: "The future is a journey across uncharted waters. We may not know what lies beyond the horizon, but together, we hold the power to steer toward kindness, wisdom, and wonder. The ripples Emily had created now moved with a momentum that felt both exhilarating and daunting. Yet she embraced the challenge with the quiet determination that had always defined her. The world was listening. And she was ready to speak. Despite the expanding reach of Emily's message, the shadows lurking beneath the surface of progress grew darker and more insistent. The digital whisper war that had once been a murmur now escalated into something more tangible. Organized campaigns aimed at undermining her credibility and eroding the trust she had painstakingly built. It started with subtle online manipulations, doctored images, fabricated quotes, and orchestrated smear tactics disguised as legitimate criticism. Then, it moved into more personal attacks. Anonymous emails flooded Emily's inbox, each one crafted to provoke doubt, fear, or anger. Some threatened legal action, others implied surveillance. Amanda and Emily tightened their circle of trust, relying on Marcus, the cybersecurity expert, to guard their digital frontiers. Marcus warned them bluntly, "These aren't just trolls. Someone is behind this, someone with resources and intent. It's a war for influence, and you're on the front lines." The realization was sobering. Emily was no longer just a voice among many, she was a symbol in a broader conflict between the old guard of unchecked power and the new wave of thoughtful innovation she represented. One afternoon, as Emily sat at her desk, she received a message that chilled her to the bone, a carefully edited video portraying her as a puppet of corporate interests, complete with manipulated audio snippets taken out of context. The video spread quickly across social media platforms, drawing harsh criticism from unexpected corners. Friends reached out, confused and hurt. The Polaris Foundation issued a rare statement defending Emily, but the damage was done. For the first time, Emily felt her foundation cracking. At school, the atmosphere shifted again. Whispers followed her in hallways, once friendly classmates now wore wary expressions. Teachers seemed more distant, cautious about being associated with controversy. The isolation Emily had feared was no longer abstract, it was real. Yet, in the darkest moments, a flicker of resilience ignited within her. She refused to retreat. Instead, she doubled down on what she believed. Emily began writing letters that confronted the shadow directly, not with anger, but with clarity and courage. She exposed the tactics used to silence dissent, the dangers of misinformation, and the urgent need for collective vigilance. Her words resonated with many who had felt powerless in the face of manipulative forces. Amanda stood firmly beside her daughter, becoming not only a mother but a fierce advocate. Together, they reached out to journalists known for integrity and to grassroots organizations dedicated to digital rights. Slowly, allies emerged from unexpected places. Former skeptics, industry insiders disillusioned with opaque practices, and everyday citizens fed up with being pawns in hidden agendas. One evening, Marcus delivered startling news. "We traced some attacks back to a shadowy consultancy linked to lobbying groups opposed to the Foundation's initiatives. They see you as a threat to their control over emerging technologies." The implications were grave. Emily's fight wasn't just personal, it was part of a larger battle over the future of technology, governance, and society itself. Still, the more the shadows deepened, the more Emily's resolve strengthened. She realized that vulnerability was not weakness but a gateway to authentic connection. She started hosting encrypted virtual gatherings, inviting young people worldwide to share their fears, hopes, and ideas. These sessions became a sanctuary, a place where voices silenced elsewhere could be heard. In one such gathering, Emily listened as a teenager from Nairobi described how misinformation had disrupted efforts to provide clean water. A girl in Buenos Aires shared her dream of creating AI tools to assist refugees. These stories galvanized Emily's belief that technology, when guided by empathy, could bridge divides rather than deepen them. Meanwhile, Elon Musk reached out again, offering support and advice. "The path is never smooth," he told her in a private message. "But the future belongs to those who endure." Emily and Amanda traveled to a remote retreat organized by the Polaris Foundation to regroup and strategize. Surrounded by others committed to ethical innovation, Emily found renewed strength. They discussed transparency measures, community engagement, and ways to amplify authentic voices amid noise. The retreat ended with a simple but powerful affirmation: the fight was not against technology itself but for the soul of humanity within it. Returning home, Emily faced the next challenge head-on. She released a letter titled, "In the Shadow's Wake," acknowledging the difficulties but reaffirming her commitment to honesty, openness, and hope. It quickly went viral among supportive communities, sparking renewed conversations about accountability and integrity. The shadow deepened, yes, but so did the light Emily carried. Through the storm, she learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to move forward despite it. And in that choice, she discovered a strength that no whisper, no shadow, could extinguish. The pressure of the Shadow campaign was relentless, but amid the noise, a breakthrough emerged that would change everything for Emily and her mission. It came unexpectedly, not from grand gestures or sweeping endorsements, but from a quiet moment of connection during one of her encrypted virtual gatherings. As Emily navigated the familiar faces on the screen, young voices from every corner of the world, her attention was caught by a soft-spoken participant named Daniel, a 15-year-old programmer from Detroit. Daniel's background was far from privileged. He grew up in a neighborhood where technology was a scarce luxury and opportunity often felt like a distant dream. Yet his intellect was undeniable, and his ideas about creating accessible, open-source tools to empower marginalized communities sparked a fire in Emily. He spoke about coding platforms that didn't just serve corporations but gave voice to the unheard. Emily found in Daniel a mirror of her own beliefs, a reminder that technology could be a bridge rather than a barrier. Inspired by his vision, she proposed a collaboration, inviting him to join forces with the Polaris Foundation's emerging projects. This alliance marked a turning point. With Daniel's fresh perspective and grassroots experience, the foundation began developing an initiative aimed at democratizing technology education. The goal was simple yet ambitious: to ensure that every young person, regardless of background, had access to the tools and knowledge to shape their future. The initiative launched quietly, but it gained traction swiftly. Schools, community centers, and non-profit organizations signed on, eager to participate in workshops, mentorship programs, and hackathons designed to foster creativity and critical thinking. Emily's letters started featuring stories from participants: children coding their first app, teenagers designing sustainable solutions for local challenges, young activists using AI to advocate for social justice. These narratives brought warmth and hope to the public discourse, counterbalancing the cynicism that had permeated previous months. Meanwhile, the Polaris Foundation's reputation grew as a beacon of ethical innovation. The Shadow campaign's efforts to discredit Emily began to falter as more voices joined hers, united by a shared vision of progress with purpose. Elon Musk publicly praised the initiative, emphasizing the importance of inclusivity in shaping the future. This endorsement brought renewed visibility and resources, allowing the project to expand globally. Yet, even as success blossomed, Emily remained grounded. She understood that the breakthrough was not a destination but a milestone in an ongoing journey. She continued to write with honesty and vulnerability, sharing both triumphs and setbacks. In one particularly poignant letter, she reflected, "Progress is not a straight line but a winding path filled with obstacles and discoveries. What matters is not how fast we move, but how carefully we listen along the way." The personal cost of the journey was not lost on Emily. The exhaustion from constant scrutiny and the emotional toll of public battles weighed heavily. Amanda remained her steadfast anchor, offering comfort and perspective. "You're doing more than most could dream," Amanda reminded her during a rare quiet evening. "Remember to breathe and take care of yourself." Emily nodded, realizing that self-care was an essential part of leadership, a lesson she hoped others would learn alongside her. One evening, as she prepared for a virtual keynote at a global technology conference, Emily paused to reflect on how far she had come. From the isolated child with an extraordinary IQ to a young woman leading a movement, the transformation was profound. Yet, the core of her mission remained unchanged, to ensure that technology served humanity's highest ideals. The conference was a resounding success. Emily's speech was a call to action wrapped in a story of hope and resilience. She spoke about the power of community, the necessity of ethics, and the boundless potential of young minds when given the chance to thrive. The audience responded with standing ovations, and the event sparked new partnerships and commitments from leaders across industries. After the conference, Emily received a message from Elon Musk. This time, it was brief but powerful: keep pushing. The future needs voices like yours. That simple encouragement reignited Emily's resolve. As she looked toward the horizon, she knew the breakthrough was just the beginning. The fight for a future where innovation and empathy coexist was far from over, but now, she was not alone. Together with allies old and new, Emily stepped forward into the next chapter of her extraordinary journey, ready to face challenges, inspire change, and light the way for generations to come. Just as the momentum of the Polaris Foundation's new initiative was beginning to ripple across communities worldwide, an unexpected development shook Emily's carefully built world. It came in the form of a letter, hand-delivered by a courier to their modest home one quiet afternoon. The envelope was plain but heavy, sealed with a wax emblem Emily didn't recognize. Inside was a note written in precise, elegant handwriting. It read, "I have been following your journey, Emily. Your courage and clarity are rare in these times. I want to offer my help." The signature at the bottom sent a shockwave through Emily's mind: Dr. Evelyn Parker. Evelyn was a renowned figure in the world of artificial intelligence, once celebrated as a pioneer, then silenced by controversy. She had retreated from public life after her radical ideas on AI ethics had clashed with powerful corporations and government interests. Many considered her a pariah, some whispered darker theories about her fall from grace. Amanda immediately expressed skepticism. "Why now? Why you?" she asked aloud, scanning the note again. Emily, however, felt a spark of hope. The world wasn't so black and white, allies could emerge from the most unexpected places. After careful deliberation and a secure video call, Emily and Amanda spoke with Evelyn. The meeting was intense, charged with a mix of caution and curiosity. Evelyn spoke openly about her regrets and her vision for technology that was deeply rooted in human values rather than profit or control. She confessed to having been sidelined because her ideas threatened entrenched interests but affirmed her commitment to the cause Emily had embraced. "Your voice is the spark the world needs," Evelyn said. "Together, we can build something that lasts." With Evelyn's expertise, the Polaris Foundation's projects gained new depth. She introduced advanced ethical frameworks for AI development and helped design protocols to prevent misuse and bias. Her insights into the darker potentials of technology, surveillance, manipulation, dehumanization, added urgency to their mission. Yet, integrating Evelyn was not without challenges. Some in the Foundation's network remained wary, questioning her motives and past. Emily stood firm, advocating for redemption and the power of change. "We can't build a future without learning from those who have walked difficult paths," she argued. This stance further defined Emily's leadership, not as a figurehead, but as a bridge builder, willing to navigate complexity for the greater good. Meanwhile, the shadow campaign that had targeted Emily shifted tactics. With Evelyn's background, the attacks intensified, now also aimed at her. Online forums erupted with conspiracy theories linking Evelyn to shadowy government experiments and corporate espionage. The Foundation faced a new wave of skepticism, forcing them to bolster transparency and communication efforts. Emily and Evelyn worked closely to address concerns, hosting open forums and Q&A sessions that invited public scrutiny rather than avoided it. This openness gradually won over many doubters, transforming suspicion into cautious optimism. One day, during a live virtual town hall, a young woman named Mia shared her story. A coder from a disadvantaged neighborhood, Mia had struggled to find mentors and resources until discovering the Polaris Foundation's programs. Hearing Evelyn and Emily speak candidly about setbacks and hopes gave Mia the courage to pursue her own innovations aimed at improving healthcare accessibility. "Your honesty changed how I see failure, not as the end, but as part of growth," she said, voice trembling with emotion. Moments like these renewed Emily's belief in their work. She realized the unexpected ally in Evelyn was not just a brilliant mind but a testament to resilience and redemption, a living example of the story Emily wanted to tell. As months passed, Evelyn's involvement deepened, and a tentative friendship grew between the two women. They spent long evenings discussing philosophy, technology, and the meaning of progress. Evelyn often remarked on Emily's unique combination of youthful idealism and practical wisdom, calling her the rare leader who listens as much as she speaks. Yet, Emily never lost sight of the broader battle. The world was still fraught with tension, corporate greed, political machinations, social inequality, all tangled with the rapid pace of technological change. But with Evelyn's guidance and the growing community around her, Emily felt equipped to meet these challenges head-on. One evening, as Emily and Amanda sat quietly reflecting, Amanda said, "You've turned obstacles into opportunities. That's real strength." Emily smiled, knowing the road ahead remained uncertain but no longer walked alone. The unexpected ally had not only strengthened their cause but had become a beacon of hope for what was possible when courage met compassion. As the Polaris Foundation's influence continued to grow, Emily found herself at a crossroads where trust, both given and earned, became the most precious and fragile currency. The unexpected alliance with Dr. Evelyn Parker had opened doors to new possibilities but also exposed the foundation to fresh scrutiny. The world watched closely, eager to see if the partnership would hold or crumble under pressure. One crisp autumn morning, Emily received an encrypted message from an anonymous source claiming to possess evidence that Evelyn had covertly shared sensitive Foundation data with outside parties. The message included fragmented files and vague accusations. Emily's heart pounded. Betrayal was the last thing she needed. But the source's anonymity made verification impossible, and the timing, just as they prepared to announce a major technological breakthrough, felt suspicious. Emily knew that acting hastily could jeopardize everything they had built. She called an emergency meeting with Amanda, Evelyn, Marcus, and the Foundation's board members. The room was tense, filled with questions and unspoken doubts. Evelyn denied the allegations vehemently, her voice steady but eyes weary. "I have dedicated myself to this mission," she said. "If there is any wrongdoing, I want to know and correct it." Marcus launched a thorough internal audit, tracing digital footprints and access logs. Days passed with no clear evidence emerging, but whispers began circulating in the media. Skeptics and adversaries seized the opportunity to cast shadows on the Foundation's integrity. Emily grappled with conflicting emotions, fear of betrayal, frustration at uncertainty, and the weight of leadership demanding decisive action. She reached out personally to Evelyn, seeking honesty and clarity. Their conversation was raw and unfiltered. Evelyn revealed her past mistakes candidly, acknowledging times when her zeal had led to misjudgments. But she swore her commitment to transparency and growth was unwavering. "Trust is earned and fragile," she said. "But it must be tested to become stronger." Meanwhile, Emily's own network fractured as some allies hesitated, uncertain where the truth lay. The young community she had nurtured feared disillusionment. Emily knew that to heal these fractures, she had to lead with vulnerability. In a heartfelt open letter, she addressed the controversy directly. She acknowledged the pain of doubt, the challenges of navigating complexity, and the importance of patience and dialogue. The letter resonated widely, drawing support and empathy from unexpected corners. One message stood out, a voicemail from Daniel, the young programmer from Detroit. "We all stumble," he said simply. "But falling isn't failing if you keep getting up." That sentiment echoed through Emily's mind as the audit concluded. No conclusive evidence of wrongdoing was found. The accusations appeared to be part of a coordinated disinformation effort aimed at destabilizing the foundation. Relief mixed with lingering caution. The crisis had tested the bonds of trust, but it also revealed their resilience. Emily and Evelyn emerged with a renewed commitment to openness, implementing even stricter protocols and inviting external observers to monitor the foundation's activities. The experience deepened their partnership, fostering a mutual respect born of trial and transparency. Amid the turmoil, Emily continued to nurture the foundation's projects and community. She held workshops emphasizing critical thinking and media literacy, equipping young participants to recognize and resist manipulation. She emphasized that trust was not blind faith but a dynamic process requiring awareness and courage. One evening, after a particularly intense day, Amanda found Emily staring out the window, lost in thought. "You carry so much," Amanda said softly. Emily smiled tiredly. "I'm learning that leadership isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise, how you rebuild trust when it breaks." The crossroads of trust had been daunting, but it also revealed the strength of Emily's vision, a future where integrity, compassion, and resilience formed the foundation of progress. As the world moved forward, the Polaris Foundation stood not just as a beacon of innovation but as a testament to the power of trust in the face of uncertainty. Just as Emily and the Polaris Foundation began regaining stability after the trust crisis, a new, more insidious challenge emerged, one that threatened to unravel their progress from within. It wasn't a public attack or a smear campaign this time, but a subtle, creeping problem that lurked in the complexities of technology itself: algorithmic bias. The Foundation's ambitious AI projects, designed to empower marginalized communities and democratize access, relied heavily on machine learning models. However, as they scaled up their initiatives, discrepancies started surfacing, unintended patterns of exclusion and unfairness embedded deep in the data and code. The letter resonated widely, drawing support and empathy from unexpected corners. One message stood out, a voicemail from Daniel, the young programmer from Detroit. "We all stumble," he said simply. "But falling isn't failing if you keep getting up." That sentiment echoed through Emily's mind as the audit concluded. No conclusive evidence of wrongdoing was found. The accusations appeared to be part of a coordinated disinformation effort aimed at destabilizing the foundation. Relief mixed with lingering caution. The crisis had tested the bonds of trust, but it also revealed their resilience. Emily and Evelyn emerged with a renewed commitment to openness, implementing even stricter protocols and inviting external observers to monitor the Foundation's activities. The experience deepened their partnership, fostering a mutual respect born of trial and transparency. Amid the turmoil, Emily continued to nurture the Foundation's projects and community. She held workshops emphasizing critical thinking and media literacy, equipping young participants to recognize and resist manipulation. She emphasized that trust was not blind faith but a dynamic process requiring awareness and courage. One evening, after a particularly intense day, Amanda found Emily staring out the window, lost in thought. "You carry so much," Amanda said softly. Emily smiled tiredly. "I'm learning that leadership isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise, how you rebuild trust when it breaks." The crossroads of trust had been daunting, but it also revealed the strength of Emily's vision, a future where integrity, compassion, and resilience formed the foundation of progress. As the world moved forward, the Polaris Foundation stood not just as a beacon of innovation but as a testament to the power of trust in the face of uncertainty. Just as Emily and the Polaris Foundation began regaining stability after the trust crisis, a new, more insidious challenge emerged, one that threatened to unravel their progress from within. It wasn't a public attack or a smear campaign this time, but a subtle, creeping problem that lurked in the complexities of technology itself: algorithmic bias. The Foundation's ambitious AI projects, designed to empower marginalized communities and democratize access, relied heavily on machine learning models. However, as they scaled up their initiatives, discrepancies started surfacing, unintended patterns of exclusion and unfairness embedded deep in the data and code. The foundation organized workshops and seminars on ethical AI, inviting voices from sociology, anthropology, and human rights to join technologists in the conversation. Slowly, they began to develop new frameworks that balanced technical rigor with social awareness. The process transformed the foundation's culture. Team members became more attuned to the ethical dimensions of their work, challenging assumptions and embracing humility. Emily found herself evolving as a leader, recognizing that progress meant embracing imperfection and continuous learning. The experience also deepened the foundation's connection with its community. Participants appreciated the candidness and the active steps taken to make technology truly equitable. Trust, once fragile, grew stronger through shared effort and accountability. Meanwhile, Emily reflected on her own journey, from the precocious 10-year-old whose IQ sparked curiosity, to the young woman facing the immense complexity of real-world challenges. Intelligence alone was not enough, empathy, perseverance, and collaboration were equally vital. One evening, as she prepared a keynote speech on ethical innovation, Emily wrote, "Technology is a mirror reflecting who we are, our strengths and our flaws. To build a better future, we must look honestly at that reflection and commit to change." The unseen challenge of algorithmic bias had tested the foundation's ideals but also enriched them. It reminded Emily that the path to a just future was neither straightforward nor quick, but a continuous journey shaped by courage, humility, and hope. After months of intense work addressing algorithmic bias, the Polaris Foundation found itself at a critical juncture, a turning point where their efforts either would cement their vision or risk being overshadowed by lingering doubt. The community's patience, once stretched thin, now began to show signs of renewal as the foundation rolled out its first suite of redesigned AI tools, built with the lessons learned from the previous setbacks. The launch was both a technical and symbolic milestone. Emily's team had integrated not only new algorithms but also built-in mechanisms for ongoing feedback and adaptability, ensuring the technology could evolve with the user's needs and concerns. The event was held virtually, with participants from around the globe tuning in. Emily opened with a question that had become a hallmark of her approach: what does it mean to truly listen? The question set the tone for the day, emphasizing dialogue over declaration, collaboration over command. As the new tools were demonstrated, there was an undeniable energy, hope mixed with cautious optimism. The feedback channels flooded with responses, many expressing gratitude and excitement about the improvements. Among the voices was Mia, the young coder from Detroit, who shared how the new tools empowered her community to develop localized solutions addressing education and health disparities. Emily's heart swelled with pride, but she remained vigilant, aware that progress was never guaranteed. Behind the scenes, however, not all was smooth. Internal tension simmered. Some team members, exhausted from the relentless pace and public scrutiny, questioned the feasibility of their mission's scale. Others worried that the foundation's growing visibility invited even greater risks from adversaries who thrived on chaos and division. Emily confronted these challenges head-on, emphasizing the importance of resilience and shared purpose. "We are not just building technology," she reminded them, "we are shaping the future. That requires courage, patience, and trust, in each other and in the process." At the same time, Emily nurtured her own growth. The experience of navigating crisis and transformation deepened her understanding of leadership. She realized that influence was less about authority and more about inspiring authenticity and vulnerability. This insight crystallized during a candid conversation with Evelyn one rainy afternoon. Evelyn confessed, "You have a rare gift, not just for vision but for connection. That's what makes you a leader worth following." Emily smiled, grateful for the affirmation but aware of the weight it carried. The turning point extended beyond the foundation. The wider tech community took notice, with several organizations adopting Polaris's ethical frameworks and open-source tools. A coalition formed. An alliance of innovators, activists, and policymakers committed to responsible technology. Emily found herself in new rooms, speaking alongside leaders and skeptics alike. Each encounter tested her ability to listen, persuade, and learn. One particular debate with a corporate executive advocating unchecked innovation stood out. The executive argued that regulation stifled creativity, while Emily countered with the imperative of accountability and social responsibility. The exchange was intense but respectful, embodying the very dialogue Emily championed. The turning point also brought personal moments of reflection. Emily revisited her childhood memories, the isolation, the yearning for understanding, the early sense of purpose. She recognized how those experiences had shaped her resilience and empathy. Writing in her journal, she noted, "The journey is never linear. The struggles are part of the story we tell ourselves and the world." As the chapter of transformation unfolded, Amanda remained a constant source of support, reminding Emily to find balance amid the whirlwind. "Your vision is powerful, but so is your well-being," Amanda said during a rare weekend getaway. Emily agreed, realizing that sustainable change required nurturing not only ideas but also the people behind them. The turning point was marked by a powerful keynote Emily delivered at an international summit. She shared the foundation's story candidly, the challenges, failures, and triumphs, inviting others to embrace complexity and imperfection in the pursuit of progress. The speech ended with a call to action: "Let us build futures not on fear or division, but on hope and shared humanity." The audience erupted in applause, many inspired to join the movement. In the weeks that followed, Emily sensed a subtle but profound shift. A momentum rooted not in hype or rhetoric but in genuine connection and purpose. The Polaris Foundation had crossed the threshold from idealism to impact, from aspiration to tangible change. Yet Emily knew the journey was far from over. The turning point was not an endpoint but a doorway, a gateway to new challenges and opportunities. With Evelyn's continued partnership, Daniel's innovations, and a growing global community, Emily was ready to step forward. The future beckoned, complex, uncertain, but filled with promise. And at its heart was the belief that technology, when guided by empathy and ethics, could be a force for good. As she prepared for what lay ahead, Emily whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." With the Polaris Foundation's renewed momentum firmly established, Emily began to witness the true breadth of their impact. Far beyond the immediate circles of the foundation, ripples of change spread through communities, industries, and individual lives. It was one thing to build technology and frameworks in controlled environments, it was another to see how those tools transformed the real world, often in unexpected ways. One morning, Emily opened an email from a teacher in rural Kansas named Sarah. Sarah wrote about how the Foundation's educational AI had revolutionized her classroom, adapting lessons to each student's unique needs and sparking enthusiasm among children who had long struggled with traditional methods. "My students are not only learning faster," Sarah explained, "but they're gaining confidence and creativity. Your work has given them a new sense of possibility." The message moved Emily deeply. She remembered her own struggles as a young girl and how a single encouraging moment could change a lifetime. That same week, Emily received a video from a young man named Carlos, a community organizer in Los Angeles. Carlos shared how the Foundation's health AI was helping local clinics better predict outbreaks and allocate resources in underserved neighborhoods. His voice was steady but filled with hope. "Technology isn't just code and machines, it's a lifeline for people like us." These stories reminded Emily that the ripple effect was both tangible and profound. The Foundation's mission to blend technology with humanity was more than abstract idealism, it was changing lives. But ripple effects often create waves, unintended consequences and challenges that test resilience. In one city, the introduction of automated services disrupted jobs, stirring anxiety and resistance among workers who feared being left behind. Emily and her team responded swiftly, launching programs to retrain and empower displaced workers, emphasizing partnership over replacement. "Technology should uplift, not displace," Emily said during a community forum. This holistic approach strengthened trust and demonstrated the Foundation's commitment to inclusive progress. The ripple effect also reached the policy arena. Legislators invited Emily to testify before a congressional committee exploring regulation of emerging technologies. Her testimony was a compelling blend of evidence, ethics, and personal stories, urging lawmakers to craft thoughtful policies that balanced innovation with protection. The hearing drew widespread attention and helped shape a new wave of responsible tech legislation. Throughout these developments, Emily's leadership matured into something deeper, a rare blend of vision, humility, and unwavering commitment. She cultivated relationships across sectors, building coalitions that crossed traditional boundaries. At a global summit on sustainable development, she joined voices with activists, scientists, and business leaders, all advocating for a future where technology served people and planet alike. But the ripple effect wasn't confined to professional spheres. Emily's personal life grew richer and more complex as well. Her relationship with Amanda deepened, grounded in mutual respect and shared dreams. They navigated the delicate balance between work and life, carving out moments of joy amid relentless demands. Emily's parents, once distant figures shadowed by her early struggles, began to reconnect. Her mother called more often, sharing stories and laughter, while her father attended community events, expressing pride in Emily's achievements. These reconnections reminded Emily that change often started at home, in the quiet spaces of love and forgiveness. One evening, as Emily sat on her porch watching the sunset, she reflected on the journey, the obstacles, the victories, the lessons learned. She thought about the young girl she had been, and the woman she was becoming. The ripple effect wasn't just about technology or society, it was deeply personal. It was about growth, healing, and the courage to keep moving forward. In a journal entry, Emily wrote, "Every action, no matter how small, sends waves outward. We are all connected by these ripples, by our choices, our kindness, our courage. This is the power we hold." The Polaris Foundation continued to evolve, adapting to new challenges and opportunities with grace and grit. Its community expanded, drawing diverse voices and talents, united by a shared commitment to ethical innovation. Emily often thought back to the moment she first met Elon Musk, the boy with the extraordinary IQ, and how that encounter had set her on this path. The answer she gave that day, a simple but profound reflection on empathy and human connection, had shaped a lifetime of purpose. As new stories poured in from around the world, Emily realized the ripple effect was far from over. Each wave carried the promise of transformation, a reminder that even the smallest acts could ignite change. The future remained uncertain, but it was brightened by the collective efforts of those willing to believe in something better. Emily closed her journal and looked up at the stars, feeling a deep sense of peace and possibility. The ripples she helped create were reaching farther than she had ever imagined, touching lives, inspiring hearts, and building bridges across divides. And in that moment, she knew, the journey was only just beginning. As the Polaris Foundation's ripple effect spread across communities and continents, Emily sensed a looming challenge, one that would test everything they had built and everything she had become. The final test was not a technological hurdle or a public relations battle, but a profound ethical dilemma that cut to the heart of the Foundation's mission. It began with the discovery of a breakthrough in quantum computing by a rival organization, a development that promised to accelerate AI capabilities exponentially but also raised alarming concerns about privacy, security, and control. The Polaris Foundation's advisory board convened an emergency session to evaluate the implications. Emily listened carefully as experts debated the potential for both unprecedented progress and catastrophic misuse. The stakes were immense. Quantum-powered AI could revolutionize medicine, climate modeling, and education, but it could also enable surveillance on a scale previously unimaginable, deepening inequalities and eroding trust. Emily felt the weight of leadership heavier than ever. The Foundation had always championed responsible innovation, but this new frontier demanded new levels of vigilance, courage, and foresight. She convened her closest team, Evelyn, Amanda, Marcus, and Daniel, to strategize a response. Together, they crafted a plan to develop quantum-safe AI protocols, open-source tools and guidelines designed to ensure ethical deployment of quantum technologies worldwide. But implementing these protocols meant confronting powerful interests resistant to oversight and transparency. As Polaris prepared to launch its initiative, they faced intense pushback, from corporate lobbyists, political factions, and even some within the tech community who argued that regulation stifled innovation. Media outlets polarized public opinion, some hailing the foundation as guardians of humanity, others accusing it of fearmongering and obstruction. Amid the turmoil, Emily maintained her focus on the core principle that had guided her from the beginning: technology must serve humanity, not the other way around. She engaged in tireless dialogue with stakeholders, fostering conversations that transcended ideological divides. One particularly pivotal moment came during a global digital ethics conference. Emily shared the stage with a leading quantum computing pioneer known for prioritizing profit over precaution. Their debate was spirited and widely covered, capturing the world's attention. Emily emphasized the human cost of unchecked innovation, telling stories of communities impacted by invasive technologies and lost autonomy. Her words resonated, reminding listeners that behind every code and calculation were real people with hopes, fears, and rights. As the debate unfolded, Emily also confronted her own doubts and fears: the responsibility of shaping a future no one could fully predict, the risk of failure, and the ever-present tension between idealism and pragmatism. She confided in Amanda one night, "Sometimes I wonder if the price of progress is too high. But then I remember why we started, to create a world where everyone has a chance." Amanda's steady presence provided solace and strength, grounding Emily in love and shared purpose. Meanwhile, the Polaris Foundation mobilized a global coalition: scientists, ethicists, activists, and policymakers united to advocate for ethical quantum AI. They launched educational campaigns, policy recommendations, and technology audits designed to hold innovators accountable and empower users. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Governments enacted new regulations informed by Polaris's work, corporations adopted transparency measures, and communities gained tools to safeguard their digital rights. The final test revealed the true power of collective action and the importance of ethical stewardship in technology. It was a testament to the Foundation's growth, from a young girl's curious answer to a global movement shaping the future. On a quieter note, Emily took time to reflect on her personal journey. She revisited the questions that had guided her: what pushes us forward when things get tough? How do we balance ambition with responsibility? What does it mean to lead with integrity? Writing in her journal, she concluded, "The final test is not a destination but a continuous choice, to act with courage, to listen with empathy, and to believe in the possibility of good." As the chapter closed, Emily stood before a new horizon, ready for whatever came next, fortified by the lessons of the past and the hope of a better tomorrow. The final test was not the end but a beginning, a call to rise again, together. The day Emily had both long anticipated and quietly feared arrived with a blend of solemnity and celebration. The Polaris Foundation was hosting a global summit to mark a new era of ethical innovation. This gathering wasn't just a showcase of technology or a roll call of achievements. It was a reflection of a journey, a collective story woven from struggle, hope, and unyielding commitment. As Emily stepped onto the stage to deliver the keynote, she felt the weight of every challenge she had faced: the early days of isolation, the skepticism of peers, the fierce battles against bias and misuse, the final test confronting the quantum frontier. Her mind flashed back to that moment, years ago, when a curious 10-year-old with an extraordinary IQ had asked a simple but profound question. That question had changed everything. Today, Emily was no longer just a brilliant mind or a visionary leader. She had become a symbol of what was possible when intellect met empathy and courage met humility. The room was filled with a diverse crowd: scientists, activists, educators, policy makers, students, and everyday people from around the world. Cameras broadcast the event live, and social media buzzed with excitement and hope. Emily began with a question, echoing her first keynote long ago: what drives us to build a better future, even when the path is uncertain? The question hung in the air, inviting reflection. She spoke candidly about the Foundation's journey, sharing stories of setbacks and breakthroughs, fears and triumphs. She described the unseen challenges that had tested their resolve, from algorithmic bias to the ethical dilemmas of emerging technologies. But most importantly, she highlighted the power of community, the countless individuals who had joined the mission, lending their voices, talents, and hearts. This journey has taught us that technology alone cannot solve our greatest challenges, Emily said. It is our humanity, our empathy, our courage, and our willingness to listen, that shapes the future. She emphasized that progress required continuous reflection and accountability, inviting everyone to remain vigilant and compassionate. After her speech, the summit featured panels and workshops focused on sustainability, inclusion, and ethical innovation. Emily moved through the crowds, engaging with attendees, absorbing their hopes and concerns. The energy was palpable, a shared belief in possibility tempered by realism. That evening, as the summit concluded, Emily found a quiet moment with Amanda. They stood outside under a sky bursting with stars, the cool night air filled with soft voices and distant laughter. Amanda squeezed Emily's hand. "You've done something extraordinary," she said. "Not just building technology, but building trust and hope." Emily smiled, feeling the fullness of the moment. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "It was all of us, every person who believed in this vision and kept going when things got hard." Reflecting on the journey, Emily realized how much she had grown, not just as a leader but as a person. The little girl who once felt lost and unheard had found her voice and used it to inspire change on a global scale. The relationships she had nurtured, family, friends, colleagues, had been her anchors, reminding her of what truly mattered. Emily thought back to the lessons learned, that intelligence was powerful only when paired with empathy, that innovation without ethics was dangerous, that progress required humility and openness to change. She understood that life's unpredictability was a teacher, not an obstacle. In her final journal entry, she wrote, "Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. The greatest innovations are those that honor our shared humanity and lift us all." The Polaris Foundation story was far from over, but this chapter closed with a profound sense of peace and purpose. Emily looked ahead, ready to face new challenges, knowing she was not alone. The story that had begun with a chance meeting between a young girl and a visionary entrepreneur had blossomed into a movement, one that would continue to spark new beginnings and inspire countless others to dream, dare, and do. As the summit lights dimmed and the world turned toward the future, Emily felt a quiet certainty: no matter what lay ahead, the path forward would be guided by the light of empathy, integrity, and hope. And in that, there was infinite possibility. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?